Welcome everyone back to another video of clever coding. In the previous video we've been discussing about functions and we didn't go that in detail in that video, but in this video we're going to go a little more in depth and cover out the basics of what a function is. So basically what I introduced was that a function is something called a subprogram that is designed to perform a particular task. And we could name the function as what the task is saying. Like for instance, if you want to create a sum function and then you just put the parameters in, do all the stuff and return some kind of residual value out to the user. So you could make any kind of function you want. And there's also built-in functions in C++ that you could reuse and you could use over and over. So if I go into a website and I search what a function is, it says over here, a function is a block of organized reusable code that is used to perform a single related action. Functions provide better modularity for your application and a high degree of code reusing. So basically it's like the reusability, what we said, like recycling. And then now we're gonna go in our code and I'm gonna start typing a function over here. We know that it was after the using namespace standard. So we're gonna write the return type first of all, and I just make it int for the now. And then after that I could also say, like the last one we had sum, and in this one I'll say something called, let's see, I'll say mult for multiplying, and then we put the parentheses and put our parameters inside. So for instance I could say int a comma int b, and then okay, now first thing is this is called the definition. In the last video we declared and also defined our function in this block. But in this video, I'm going to tell you two ways that you could define and declare your functions. You declared your function over here, okay? So the compiler didn't reserve any kind of memory whatsoever if you just declare it over here. But if you like define it over here right after this, just say int mult again and say int a comma int b, and then start with the curly braces. So once the compiler detects these curly braces opening and closing, it knows that something serious has to be done, meaning you need memory. So it basically reserves some memory and performs your operation. So in this case I'm multiplying, so I'll say return a asterisk b, and over here, so this is called the declaration because of the semicolon at the end. So this was the declaration. Over here is the definition. So I'll write definition, and inside of this main function you will call the calling. So basically, for instance, if I make two numbers such as num1 is equal to 100, num2 is equal to 200, and then I could say console output mult. This is called calling the function. I call the function, and what my IDE detected was that I created an int mult function and it needs parameters. So basically I enter my parameters inside num1 comma num2, and look at that, awesome. So now if I save this and save this as something called code, let's say 20, yeah, code 20. So now if I save this, execute, compile and run, what you're gonna see is 20,000. Wow. So this is one way of defining a function and then using it. Another way to define is by, you know, this definition over here on the bottom. Just delete this entire definition which is over here. And over here, just define it right inside of this. So after the declaration, remove that crazy semicolon and put inside of this return a asterisk b. So if I run this code as well, you're going to see the same exact output. There you go. Okay, now why did I highlight out these two different ways? Okay, the first way was better, cleaner, according to programming concepts. Once you get like 1,000 lines of code or 1 million lines of code, then the thing is that the program will be harder to read and understand. And by sorting out everything in a logical sequence, like a block over here and then a block for the definition, will be more easier to understand and cope with. And then there's another way where you define your header files in one place, meaning the declarations. You make a separate file for that, and then you make a separate file for the definition. So they're gonna have a .h extension, and one will have, the definition will have a .cpp extension, and then the main place where all your code will lie, meaning where you're gonna call, is the main function. So in the main function, you're gonna have a separate main.cpp. So instance, I have this one as main.cpp, this as header.h, and this for the declarations, and this as header.cpp for the definitions. So when I have 3 different files, I can merge all of these files together to create a big, massive program. And that's what mostly a lot of programmers do these days. Okay, so without that way, now let's do a little more things. Okay, now one thing I wanted to tell you was that we have built-in functions as well. Functions are of 2 types. One are called user-defined and one are called built-in. User-defined are ones that we make ourselves. Like, for instance, right now we made a multiplication function. Yesterday we made that sum function. So we can make so many functions we want. Another type of function is called the built-in function, and those are included using header files. Like, for instance, there's a header file called cmath, and when I use this cmath, it activates a lot of bundles of different kinds of functions. So right now I don't have this mult anymore, so there's no need of doing this, so I'm just gonna remove this all. And cmath has this kind of function called a squirt. Now this squirt function is used for finding out the square root. And definitely, once you look at their header files, meaning the cmath, it doesn't show their necessary documentation and all those definitions and code, whatever they use to make this squirt function. You don't have to see, you just have to call the function like we did before. Okay, so squirt, you have, let's see if we want to get the squirt of 64. So I'm getting the squirt of 64, and I'm just console output, just a basic thing I'm gonna do. So what I'm gonna do is now go and execute and compile and run. And I'm supposed to get something. Okay, now what is happening over here? It's saying cout was not declared in this scope. Yeah, so the thing that gave me the error was that namespace standard was missing. So let me include that. Okay, so after this, save it and go to execute, compile, and run. So we got our answers, which was 8. Awesome. We use a square root function. There's gonna be way more functions than that. That was just an introduction to those functions. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to tell was that you could look up, there's like so many functions out there. Over here there are some list of functions that are just partial of them. You could get floor function, exit function, div function, log function, pow function. These are just a few. And then they have their own syntax too. When I just click on one, for instance, the pow function, you could tell that it is using the IO stream, and 4 to the 5th power is, so the 4 is going to be the base and 5 is the exponent. So that's how we're going to use the pow function. So we could have like the first parameter as the base and second one as the exponent. So that was that. I'm going to tell you about another function we could use, and that's using a different data type, and that was using void. Okay, so void is another return type, and using something like I'm creating another function called greet. Okay, and in the greet I'm just gonna pass in a string. Okay, so a string name, that's it. And you know what the greet function will do? It's just gonna it's gonna not return anything. This void data type tells us that there is nothing reserved. Okay, it's just showing some things flashed on the screen. So I'm gonna say something like welcome, and then we're gonna write the name right here. That's it. No return type, no return something, nothing like that. So how do I call this? I just write greet, and then I write the name of something. For instance, I say, let's say Johnny. Johnny. Okay. And I'm not even console output or anything. Let's see, execute, compile, and run. And there you go, welcome Johnny. Or you could just write something else. Your name, for instance, what your name is. I don't know what your name is. So whatever you put inside, you're gonna see it being reused again and again and again. Okay, so that's the beauty of functions, and hope you like that one.